Do you know what it feels like when your whole life collapses in a single moment? When the person you trusted with your heart, your soul, and your future suddenly looks you in the eyes and tells you that you're nothing? I never thought I'd know that feeling, but I do. And once you've felt it, you can never forget it. It was supposed to be a special night, our anniversary. I remember spending the entire day preparing, cooking his favorite dishes, setting the table, even lighting. The candles, he used to say, made the house feel warm and alive. I put on the dress he once told me made me look like the woman of his dreams. My heart was nervous, excited, hopeful. Because even though things between us hadn't been perfect for a while, a part of me still believed we could fix it. That maybe tonight he would remember who we were. I waited for hours. The food grew cold, the candles melted down, and my heart sank lower and lower with every tick of the clock. But then I heard the door unlock. My chest filled with relief, my lips already curling into a smile. I picked up the plate of food I had kept warm for him, ready to greet him with love, with forgiveness. But what walked through that door wasn't the man I married, it was him. Yes, but holding another woman's hand, not hiding her, not ashamed, not guilty. He walked in proudly, like I was the stranger in the room. My smile froze, my hands shook. The plate almost slipped from my fingers. I couldn't breathe. And then the unthinkable happened. He kissed her, right there, in our home. And with the coldest voice I've ever heard, he introduced her. This is the woman I love. She's my future. You're nothing now. I wish I could tell you I screamed, that I threw the plate, that I kicked him out. But no, I stood there, frozen, silent, my mind spinning so fast it felt like I was outside my own body. My knees weakened, but somehow I didn't fall. I held on to that plate like it was the only thing keeping me from collapsing. He looked at me, waiting for a reaction. Maybe he wanted me to beg. Maybe he wanted me to break. Maybe he wanted me to cry so he could feel powerful. But I gave him nothing. I just stared, my silence louder than any words. And in that silence, something broke inside me. But something else was born too. Because in that moment of humiliation, when I felt stripped of all dignity, all love, all meaning, I made a promise to myself, a promise that one day he would feel exactly what I felt that night. He would feel small. He would feel powerless. He would know what it's like to lose everything in one single moment. But revenge. Revenge doesn't come fast, it doesn't come loud. It comes like a storm that brews in silence, gathering strength, waiting for the right time to strike. And that night, as I watched him walk into our bedroom with her, laughing like I didn't exist, I knew my storm had begun. Tell me, my friends, where are you watching from? Because whether you're here in my city or thousands of miles away, heartbreak speaks the same language. Betrayal feels the same in every country, every culture. And maybe, just maybe, you've felt something like this too. If you have, then you'll understand why I couldn't just walk away, why I couldn't just let him win. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ceiling. His laughter with her echoed through the walls, stabbing me again and again. But instead of crying, I began to think, I began to plan. I began to imagine every way I could make him regret what he had done to me. And the more I thought, the calmer I became. Because I realized something powerful. He thought I was broken. He thought I was weak. He thought I was already gone. But he had no idea who I really was. No idea what I was capable of, and no idea what was coming for him. Have you ever noticed how betrayal sharpens your vision? Suddenly you see everything more clearly. The lies, the routines, the excuses that never made sense, they all connect like puzzle pieces. You should have seen long ago. That's what happened to me. Once my heart broke, my eyes finally opened. In the days that followed, I played my role well. The weak, broken wife, the silent shadow in the background. I cooked meals he barely touched. I nodded when he spoke, even when he bragged about his new happiness. I cleaned up after them, washed the perfume from his shirts, pretended not to hear the whispers and the laughter that echoed through my home. And he believed it. He thought he had crushed me. He thought I was harmless, waiting to disappear. He even told me once, almost smugly, you'll get used to it, or you'll leave. Either way, this is my house now. But while he thought I was breaking, I was building. Every night, when they fell asleep in the bed that used to be ours, I slipped into his study. I searched his drawers, his laptop, his phone records. I found emails, bank transfers, secret accounts, and business deals he thought I'd never understand. But I did. Because for years, I had been the one balancing our household, saving every bill, every receipt, every piece of paper. He never knew I was smarter than him. He never imagined I'd use it against him. The more I uncovered, the clearer my path became. This wasn't just about him cheating. This wasn't just about another woman in my bed. This was about power, about respect, about showing him that the woman he thought was weak could destroy everything he had built. But revenge requires patience. So I swallowed my pride and let him flaunt her. I watched as he brought her into our home, our living room, even at family dinners. The humiliation cut deep, but I never let it show. I stayed silent, playing the part of the discarded wife. My friends whispered behind my back. My neighbors pitied me. Even my own family told me to leave. But I couldn't, not yet, because walking away would have given him exactly what he wanted. He would have been free, with his mistress by his side, smiling at my defeat. No, I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. One night, as I stood outside the bedroom door listening to them laugh, I asked myself a question. What hurts a man like him the most? And the answer came quickly. It wasn't love. He never cared for that. It wasn't even family. No. What he valued most was his reputation, his business, his money, his pride. So that's where I aimed my knife. I started small. I recorded his late-night phone calls. I copied his secret transactions. I kept track of every lie, every betrayal, every slip of the tongue. Piece by piece, I built a case against him that no one could ignore. And as the weeks passed, something inside me changed. I no longer cried at night. I no longer felt powerless. I no longer saw myself as a victim. I became something else. Stronger, colder, smarter. The woman he thought he had broken was gone. In her place was someone he had created without realizing it, a woman who no longer loved him, no longer feared him, no longer needed him. I was no longer his wife, I was his enemy. Tell me, my friends, have you ever played weak just to catch someone off guard? Have you ever smiled in the face of pain while secretly planning your victory? Let me know where you're watching from, because I know many of you understand what I felt in those nights. That fire, that hunger for justice, that refusal to let betrayal be the final chapter. Weeks turned into months, and still I remained silent. He paraded her in public now, posting pictures, introducing her as his true love. People looked at me with pity in their eyes, whispering she should just leave him. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't see the storm I was building behind my quiet smile, because while he thought he was winning, I was already holding the knife at his back. And when the time was right, I was going to twist it. Patience is the sharpest weapon. People mistake it for weakness, but in truth, it's the deadliest form of power. And for months, I sharpened mine. Every smile I forced, every tear I swallowed, every humiliation I endured, it was all fuel for the moment I had been waiting for. And then the moment came. It was his birthday. He loved attention, loved to show off his wealth and his perfect life. So of course he planned a grand celebration. He rented out a hall, invited family, friends, business partners, even politicians and investors he wanted to impress. And by his side, naturally, was her, his mistress. Dressed in glittering red, like she owned the world, like I didn't even exist. But I did exist. And that night, I was more present than ever. I walked into the hall quietly, dressed in black. People looked at me with surprise, some with pity, some even with confusion. Why was I there? Didn't I feel ashamed? They didn't know that I wasn't there as the abandoned wife. I was there as the executioner. The music was loud, the laughter louder, and he stood at the center like a king. He raised a glass, kissed her hand, and smiled as if he had won everything. I stood at the edge, watching, waiting, my heart steady, my mind clear, because I wasn't just carrying myself into that hall, I was carrying months of secrets, evidence, and truths that would burn his world down. And when the time was right, I stepped forward with the microphone in my hand. The room fell silent. Some people gasped, others whispered. He looked at me, annoyed, almost mocking, as if I were about to embarrass myself. But I didn't embarrass myself. I embarrassed him. I started with a smile. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to say a few words for my husband on his special day. My voice was calm, steady, polite. No one suspected what was coming, not even him. Then I began. I told the room how much I had loved him, how I had devoted my life to him, how I had believed in him. People nodded, smiled, touched by my words. He smirked, thinking I was still playing the fool. But then I turned. I spoke of the woman beside him, not as his mistress, but as his new queen, the one he had proudly brought into our home, our marriage, our bed. Gasps spread through the room. His face paled. The mistress shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of every eye on her. And then I brought out the proof, emails, messages, bank transfers, recordings of his late-night calls, documents that revealed not just his betrayal, but his corruption, his illegal deals, his hidden accounts. I had it all, and I showed it right there, in front of everyone who mattered to him. The whispers grew into shock. The gasps turned into outrage. His business partners looked disgusted. His family members looked ashamed. The mistress tried to stand tall, but her face burned red with humiliation. And him, my husband, the man who once told me I was nothing, stood frozen, trembling, powerless. I had taken everything from him in one single moment. His pride, his reputation, his dignity. Do you know what silence sounds like in a room full of people? It's heavy, it suffocates, and in that silence, I looked him in the eyes and said, "You told me I was nothing. But tonight, everyone will remember who destroyed you. Tell me, my friends, where are you watching from? Because betrayal looks different in every country, but justice looks the same everywhere." And that night, justice looked like a man broken in front of the very people he thought he owned. He tried to speak, tried to deny, tried to call me crazy, but the evidence was undeniable. Screens lit up with the proof I had shared. Phones recorded his humiliation. His business partners walked out one by one. Investors pulled their hands away. Even his own parents couldn't look him in the eye. And the mistress, she slipped away quietly, leaving him standing alone in the ruins of his empire. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice once. Because revenge doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it only needs truth. And as I walked out of that hall, I didn't feel weak anymore. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. But my revenge wasn't finished, because humiliation was only the beginning. The real destruction was still to come. Humiliation destroys a man's pride. But humiliation alone wasn't enough for me. Not after everything he had done. No, I didn't just want to shame him. I wanted to strip him of everything he had ever valued. Everything he thought made him untouchable. I wanted him to taste the loneliness, the emptiness, the powerlessness he had forced upon me. And that, my friends, is exactly what I did. The morning after his birthday humiliation, news spread like wildfire. Videos from the party went viral. Headlines screamed his name, attaching it to words like betrayal, fraud, corruption, liar. His business associates cut ties immediately. His investors pulled out. His friends disappeared like shadows at sunrise. And the mistress, she vanished too. She was never there for love, only for status, for money. And once that was gone, so was she. The woman he had destroyed me for, the one he called his future, abandoned him without a second glance. I should have felt satisfied. But I wasn't done. Because while the world mocked him, I was preparing the final blow. Remember those documents I had collected? The illegal deals, the secret accounts, the proof of his corruption? I didn't just keep them for a party trick. I handed them over to the authorities, to journalists, to everyone who could make his downfall permanent. And they did. Investigations opened. His accounts were frozen. His properties seized. One by one, the pillars of his empire crumbled until nothing was left but dust. He tried to fight it, of course. Hired lawyers, bribed officials, begged old allies for help. But no one wanted to stand beside a sinking ship. And me. I didn't hide. I walked with my head high, finally free of his shadow. People who once pitied me now looked at me with awe. They whispered my name not as a victim, but as the woman who had destroyed a tyrant. Do you know what the sweetest sound in the world is? Not applause, not laughter. It's silence. The silence of a man who once shouted over you, now left speechless. The silence of a man who thought he owned you, now reduced to nothing. I visited him once, after everything was taken away. He was sitting alone in a small apartment, the kind he would have once mocked for being beneath him. The pride in his eyes was gone. The arrogance in his voice had vanished. He looked smaller somehow, weaker. He asked me why I couldn't just let it go, why I had to destroy him completely. And I looked at him the way he once looked at me, cold, uncaring, empty. And I said, because you didn't just betray me, you tried to erase me, you thought I was nothing. I had to show you that I was everything. He didn't answer. He just lowered his head. And for the first time in years, I saw him for what he really was. Not a man, not a husband, not even a monster. Just nothing. Tell me, my friends, Have you ever dreamed of a moment like that? A moment where the one who broke you is finally at your feet, powerless, shattered, alone? Where are you watching from? Because I know many of you have carried that fantasy in your hearts. And let me tell you, it is even sweeter in reality. I walked away from him that day without looking back. Because revenge, once complete, no longer needs your attention. It lives on its own in the ruins of the person who wronged you. Now, I live differently, not as a broken wife, not as a shadow, but as a woman reborn. I rebuilt my life with the strength I found in my own pain. I found freedom in my courage and power in my silence. And sometimes, late at night, I sit by the window and think of everything that happened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the revenge, and I smile. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I gained. He thought I would never survive without him. But the truth is, he never survived without me. And that is the sweetest revenge of all.